In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. They promise it'll get better, but it usually gets worse. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data, so we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, and other industry scandals are designed to keep the money flowing. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing, so they do a virus scan and then wipe out our precious photos. Intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
What's happening behind your back now, right in front of your eyes. From the Wallace Memorial Microphone in my home office, overlooking the Can of Worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Arena. I am so glad you are here with me today, and I am so glad Jamarri is here with me today from Ascension Hosting. This is our second episode talking with him. We're just getting started here. We were just getting warmed up last time, so I said we got to come back and we got to keep talking. So here you are. Where do we even begin? So in the break, Jamarri and I were talking about all sorts of topics, and somehow it came up that Louis Rossmann was nominated to be part of the new DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And for those of you who don't know who he is, he's pretty much the only man on Earth who can repair modern Apple motherboards. So if you were one of the unfortunate victims who was conned into buying an Apple product after 2019, I hate to say it, Apple was great, and then in 2019 they fell apart, and they now make evil motherboards where the hard drive is part of the motherboard, right? So if your motherboard dies, you lose all your data immediately. So he's the only person on Earth who can rescue your data, possibly. There's a possibility that he can rescue it. And as such, and again, like years ago when Steve Jobs was alive, he would rage against injustices, and Lewis is saying the same thing, where yes, he's making money on this, but it's evil and it's unjust, and he's a good and just man, so he decries all of this. Anyway, so Jamarri told me that Lewis has been nominated to help the world, to help the government, and expose what's going on here. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, so for most people who don't know what DOGE is, it's essentially the Department of Government Efficiency. And there's been a lot of people that have been recommended specifically when it comes to the FTC and just the DOGE, which obviously they're separate things, but obviously they're going to all be kind of entangled. Louis Rossmann, as he just explained, was actually someone that was kind of floated about on a few different forums. And a lot of them, people were thinking, oh, it's just a meme. It actually turns out it wasn't, because of the fact that there's another guy named Clear Value Tax that was also, he wanted to be on Doge. And because of that, what ended up happening is that he sent this information off to Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, and his fans actually kept hammering them basically about getting him there. And so Vivek Ramaswamy responded saying, we will take a look essentially to the clear value tax. And so if more and more people get on the bandwagon of pushing Louis Rossmann up the ladder and telling Vivek Ramaswamy, calling your actual representatives and telling them hey, we need this guy in government to really actually help us, especially for the FTC cabinet. Oh my goodness, we will be in a different level of thing. He mean, if you go out and watch his video, where he actually talks about it, right?
And Louis Rossmann, I love how he just calls Apple out, and he calls out a lot of companies. Like, hey, you're a company, you make products, that's great, but by the way, if you make evil products that are unrepairable, I'm going to call you out on them.
Yeah, it's interesting because he said he made the video saying, like, he wants to throw his hat in there, right, to be the FTC chairman.
Wow.
And
wow.
He in the video, it was so interesting that he put this out there. He goes, if he's made, right, he says he will do it for free if he so chose to. He would do it for free. He would give away his company and do it for free because of the fact that he wants to put a lot of these companies down in the ground for their goofy warranties, right? Which most people don't know about. He also wants to get rid of the fact that if you sign up, if it takes you 90 seconds to sign up, it should take you 90 seconds to cancel. And you shouldn't have to go through You shouldn't have to email some type of like wording just to cancel your account.
I remember like 15 years ago, I had a buddy who was on ADT for his home alarm system, right? And ADT has ads all over the place, right? And it's easy to sign up. But back then, and possibly still today, you have to send them faxes and beg them for mercy.
Yep, and that's why I mentioned in the last show, privacy.com and creating those virtual cards because of these companies doing that. Because that's why even like within my own company, there's a request of cancellation. You can cancel your service by yourself. Right?
Yeah, and that's a great point too. A lot of times with my clients, like there was this horrible, I think it was called Total AV. It was this horrific fake antivirus. So I told the client, easy, call your credit card company, tell them to block that vendor, and you're done, right? These consumers, we find ways for consumers to fight back. And let me just point out something huge here. I wasn't even aware of this. You taught me yet another new thing. I wasn't aware that people are now nominating smart people for the Doge. That's incredible, okay? Think about that, because obviously the government doesn't know about Louis Rossmann and all these people, right? It's real humans lifting these people up and nominating them and saying, these are smart people. Obviously, like you said, the guy is just helping the world. He just wants to do it for the goodness of his own heart to help the world. Which is incredible. And that, by the way, zillions of years ago, the Founding Fathers wanted that, right? They wanted people who were going to do this out of the goodness of their own heart. Any leaders who were actually in it to help the world instead of people doing it for their own profit, right? But contrast this, okay? Us as a people nominating some of the smartest people who are going to save the country versus... what was it before? It was just picking the dumbest possible people to run the show, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's why I even thought about putting in my application to Vic Ramaswamy in this.
I nominate you for anything at all. I'll sign up for you.
I was thinking I would create an automatic bot that would constantly DM them, so that way the only person that they ever get to see is me. And then that would prove that, hey, I think I deserve the job. If I can do something like that, I think it's safe I get the job.
Good point. The persistence, right?
Exactly, because I think the fact that we now have the ability for anybody sending your application, right? Obviously, you do have to be an American citizen. I'm pretty sure that's what they said.
Mm-hmm. So that matters again. Yep.
Yeah, that does matter. Yeah. Uh-huh. Imagine.
I didn't say that. Yep.
But it's like, you do have to be an American citizen in order to actually go and apply for this. And I think it's important that we really come together and we start nominating people that we know would be like a good person, because there's too many of these companies getting away with too much. The right to repair, where you can't repair your own computer, you can't repair your own phone, you can't repair your own car, because there's like goofy little warranties and goofy little things where it's like
evil agreements, evil mechanisms, evil
you
chips.
Have to go and buy the piece from the manufacturer, and then you have to then go and then pay from their dealership in order to do it. And it's like, what? Really?
And you know what? You brought up you just brought up a light bulb in my head went off, and because what I usually say on the show is that these well, what did I say last show? I said these lawmakers are 500,000 years out of date and they don't know what's going on. So for once, the people in charge would actually be aware of how these nasty, scummy companies like Apple operate. So they'll know how to fight them instead of just, Apple and Google are bad. we should make laws against them, right? Remember the feud? Elizabeth Warren had a feud with Zuckerberg, and she said, oh yeah, well, I'll make some laws about you. And Zuckerberg just slammed his fist on the table and said, bring it on. Which resulted
think
in...
about this, Mark. You know, like, the way you can tell they have no clue what they're doing, and I was talking about this with a group of friends, it's like, we're taking advice and we're letting people lead our country that don't know how to use their own computers.
Great point. They're using Outlook, for crying out loud. These people are using Microsoft Outlook, and they barely know how to send a text on some iPhone that some joker sold them for $1,200, and they have no clue. That's a great point. That's a great point. And again, even if you know nothing about how to use... Yeah.
We have, like, it's insane, because you didn't also think about this, right? This is how I knew from the very beginning that these people don't know how to run their computers. When Mark Zuckerberg was in that chamber, and then the guy's question was, so if I get up and I walk across the room, does Facebook know that? And you can tell from Mark Zuckerberg's face, he was trying not to laugh, because he was just like,
that's not digital.
That's not how that works, Senator.
And by the way, and I try to clear up. I mean, it's obviously it's a massive undertaking, but I try to clear up and shed some light on what they can and cannot do to you, right? Because I mean, yeah, I always say with my colorful language, they know everything about you. Look, folks, they know everything you give them. They know everything you type into Facebook. So just stop typing things into Facebook so that you can help dry up the beast, right?
Yeah, and the same thing with,
the dude didn't even know.
Ideals. The same thing with political ideals. What most people don't understand, especially in the day and age that we live in. So I'll put it to you this way. So in 8th grade, Trump's running, right? I was obviously in 8th grade, so let's talk about 2016. But to put this into perspective, the last 8 years, we've had a very disinformation era, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's been the last few 8 years. And it's very clear, right? And we're somewhat still in that, but it's almost we're at the tipping point of it. And the reason I say we're at the tipping point is now that we've also now gotten to the AI era on top of this era, right? Because this era is
you always say this every week in our meetings. You show people how, and side note, I want to clear up what you were saying in the beginning of last episode. AI video generation means you have a software tool, you give it an instruction like, please make me a video of a tiger walking on a windowsill, and bam, it does it. And then it makes a video that's so clear, most people would believe it.
Mm-hmm. And, it's so incredibly sad because when you look at some of these videos, like now that I've gone through so many different AI videos and I've listened to so much different audio, you can easily tell, oh, that's AI. Like, I can now tell, oh, that voice is AI because of the simple fact that the way that it responds, when you talk to people, you can almost hear the actual vibrations within their vocal cords. With AI, you don't hear that. Every single word it says is so crystal clear that it's like, wait a minute, you didn't even have a simple, where's your buffer words? Where's your pauses? Where's your, the sometimes the stumbling within your words? None of that's natural. Now, obviously, a buddy of mine, Taryn, we always talk about this a lot. He goes, sometimes I think, I'm paraphrasing, he goes, we also need to stop giving these AI companies goal marks, because every time we say AI can't do this, they will show us that it can do this in the next month.
It.
Exactly.
Their head's strong.
Exactly. And now that we're in that era of disinformation and then AI era on top of it, this is going to, and that's why I'm telling people, my course will show every single person, right? It's going to be $17 a month for now, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm telling people this course will show you everything you need to know with AI. How to spot AI propaganda, how to use each AI tool out there, how to localize the AI onto your own computer. Even have things in there where it's going over just basic things like prompts for your business, prompts for your life, automating the AI scams to avoid, right? I'm wanting to make sure that everybody has the necessary tools, because the thing that we've gotten to...
Protect yourself instead of depend on me to protect you, right? And I do this too. I say this in my book, to protect yourself, to empower the consumer.
And that's the greatest thing about capitalism is that the actual power of capitalism comes from the consumer. But see that the biggest thing is that the way that you kill that type of mentality is by becoming the biggest company, where it almost you kill your competitors, right? This guy made a really good funny joke, or like this video where he goes, okay, hey, we're on Google. How much percentage of the market share do you have? About 90%, but we have a lot of costs. Oh, okay, okay. What are those costs? Advertising and server costs. Okay, how much would you say that brings in? About 50 billion. Oh, what a year? No, a month. That's how much they make a month on their ads. And you know
Google
what's
makes
actually
50
interesting?
billion a month.
They make it way even more probably.
Wouldn't doubt it, but still, that's nuts. Actually, that's nuts.
Let's see.
Wow.
A month.
And that brings up so many things about, and I've got articles that and we got to get to
13
our
billion,
article.
by the way.
What is it?
Oh, we do. They make about 13
13
billion.
billion. And
Sometimes they make around 2.7, but annually they've made $305 billion in a year.
And that's why it's so important to them to remain a monopoly, because they want the advertisements. They want you to take out ads to promote your thing, right? In a normal world, right, what they call monopolistic competition, anyone has a chance to, you set up a tent and you sell your wares and you put up your shingle. But in a world controlled by monopoly, you have to pay them in order to show up, in order to be seen.
Exactly. And so that's the whole point of that video that was so funny is that he goes, okay, well, what about you, Yahoo? How much percentage do you own? Oh, we only own 2%. Oh, okay, what about you, Bing? Oh, 7%. And then it's funny because the whole kind of satirical joke of it is like, okay, well, Google, I think you own way too much, don't you think? Like, that's pretty much a monopoly. And he goes, well, how are we going to fix that? Well, how are we going to fix that? And then it's funny because the guy that's asking the questions is basically acting like our Congress members. And you know what he does? He Googles how to beat Google. And it's the funniest thing about it is that Bing goes, are you Googling how to beat Google? And then the joke, like the video ends, but that's the whole premise. It's that we have these people in power they don't know how to use their own computers.
Or their
They
own
barely
brains, Jamarri.
forget the only thing they can use their brains for is insider trading. If you guys want to be rich, just go follow them. Literally, there used to be a whole website that was dedicated to Nancy Pelosi and trading, and everybody started copying it, and then magically the site went down, basically.
Of course. Wow.
Like,
And this is not a political show, so I'll keep it. But there was a really funny video that y'all can check out on your own time, where the Babylon Bee, I think it was, created a video, an AI video, where they used Gavin Newsom's voice, and they used AI to quote unquote impersonate his voice, and made this incredible video just mocking everything about him. So that's pretty cool. Check that out in your own time.
I think that's important too. By the way, I don't care if you're a public figure, you should also be used for AI training. I don't care if you're a private person, you don't need to. But if you're a public like official, hands down, and I should be able to take a video of you and make whatever I want because you're a public official, because that's free speech in a nutshell. I see.
It's okay for parody, and here again, it's like the
parody.
keywords, right? Right? These laws, the whole concept of a law is black and white and keyword and not exact, right? It's a blunt object. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like a law isn't really good at what a human sentiment can do. Again, the mind of man is holy. So it's like judgment, right? Where use your own judgment here. Because what they're trying to do is make laws that say you can never make a parody of anyone, versus, hey, if it's a human judgment, okay, then hey, how about you can do it as a parody for SNL and as a joke, but don't do it for misinformation, right?
Exactly. Or like for defamation, and that makes complete sense. But the issue here is that we're facing, there's the three things I've already kind of talked about. Obviously, our privacy. The second thing being the data and the AI. But then third, the ability to even operate almost freely within the free nation, basically, where it's like there's these, especially YouTube, right? YouTube isn't a publisher, right? although they have publisher privileges.
Right. So that whole thing about, well, we're a publisher and therefore we can crush anyone we want, and that's a whole, yeah.
Well, Mark, it's not even that, Mark. It's the fact that, see, with YouTube, the reason why, like, you can show clips and all that, copyright free, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is what a lot of the government seems to be missing. There's a lot of the times where there's actually big companies going after smaller YouTubers and small people, like you, and going, you copyrighted our video, even though it's free. It's completely free, fair use, right? But guess what?
But they can crush anyone. They can accuse you. Absolutely. Exactly. That's why I can't have regular music on my shows and all that. Yeah.
Bingo. And so it's like, that needs to be changed. If all three of those things were changed, right? Obviously the monopoly and all that, we would be on a higher trajectory. But what's the article?
All right, absolutely, thanks. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know if I said this off air earlier, but just, again, non-political show, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the Doge finds, because they're going to have some findings and they're going to be able to hold them up in the air for everyone to see. And they're going to, this is our government. This is supposed to be public money, so we should have knowledge of what our money is being spent on. So I can't wait for them to hold up some bloody example of, hey, look, this is what your money has been wasted on. Hey, we got an example of X billion dollars down this toilet, and we've got X billion dollars that was wasted on this, and so on.
It's why there's a resistance, by the way, to blockchain in the government. There's a guy, he actually wanted to use blockchain in the government, and it's still on the table. But the thing about blockchain and using it is that anybody can actually see it. That's the thing.
So wait a minute. Oh, because it's somewhat traceable, where it's okay. So, it's, right. So it's like, hey, let's say we have a bunch of $1 billion that was allocated towards something. And remember in Independence Day, in the first movie, when the guy says he's in Area 51 and they see all this high technology that the government bought, and he said, what, you don't think they actually spend $30,000 on a hammer or $30,000 on a toilet seat, do you? In other words, they're repurposing that money. So what you're saying is that money would be traceable, so they couldn't just repurpose it and hide it?
Bingo. So that's the big thing about so because I've used crypto a little bit, like for the last few 5 years now. I've used it, and there's actual sites where you can basically go on there, and every time, what's great about some of these ledgers, you can see everybody's account, just like all the transactions in one place. Now you can't see what they're buying right now. Obviously, you can expand on the technology to do that, but you can still see the transactions going through. And I think if the government really wants to create true transparency, create a little site, like just create a site where it's like blockchainus.com or something, .us, or in this case it'd be .gov.
Yeah, okay. So it would actually show us. But do they, think about that, right? By all means, we have the right to see where our money is being directed in the government, but do you think they would actually do it?
See, no political party would do that, because then it would jeopardize how we would function going forward. Now, and I understand it for the simple reason, that you do want to have some type of level of security, which I think sometimes we do forget. Hey, we are a government. We do have adversaries out there, right? Not to get political, but it's we are the city we're the shining city on the hill, basically. And there's a lot of people out underneath that hill, and a lot of people around the hill that do not like that.
All right, so that's a fair argument of, okay, maybe we want to, okay.
But so this is how you could do it, though. This is the simple way you do it. You would have it where there's different accounts, right? One account that is for simple public use, right? So things such as infrastructure, roads, exactly. All that needs to be publicized. We should know what company you're hiring to build the roads, right? Why that company was chosen, and then where they actually are getting the resources from. Because most of the time, depending on obviously your small town, wherever you live, they're hiring these big name companies, right? Which
for billions and zillions.
Yeah, millions of dollars. But then it's very weird when you then go, wait a minute. There's a guy named Luis, or there's a guy named Frank down the road who owns a construction company of 30 men. Why don't you go hire him? He's local to your city.
And he's a tenth of the price or whatever. Exactly. You and I could easily go through and like a machete, right? And just chop prices on everything because we have brains and we would do this and it would be incredible, right? And wow. You know what? That brings up something else. I know in the government, let's say you're making a tank or a plane for the army, right? They have to do an insane amount of paperwork to make sure, they call it like traceable sourcing or something, where, all right, if you're the government, you buy an airplane. Okay, the airplane manufacturer has to buy the engine. That manufacturer has to buy the metal and so on. So they have to make sure each step of the way, they have to do a ton of paperwork to make sure that stuff is sourced from known sources. So that blockchain traceability might, just might, simplify that whole process. Wow, okay. So one last question, then. We don't have time for articles, but I'm going to give you one last question here. My whole thing with AI, and by the way, I'm so thrilled you are giving me so much hope that there are some smart people out there in the world, and it's not just all doom and gloom, and I'm so glad that you exist, and I'm so glad that you're at the helm here and all this. But one of my problems with AI is that it seems to be that it's running on... I mean, you and I know that Microsoft Windows is a filthy, disgusting, rotten, flaming pile of garbage from 30 years ago that destroys itself more and more every day exponentially and gets worse exponentially. It's why I'm stuck on Windows 11. What's that?
I said it's why I'm stuck on Windows 11 or 10. Sorry.
Exactly. Older is always better. Older is always safer. Older is always more ethical. And I'm so glad that you're agreeing with me on all this stuff and showing the folks that it's not just one crazy Italian guy in New York here. But anyway, so this is my fear, and you'll have to explain this, but are we running AI on top of those rotten underpinnings? Or is AI running on top of Linux at least?
So... the localized AIs, it does depend. It heavily does depend because there are some AIs that are actually, when you run them, they're running in a Linux environment.
Okay.
But obviously, with the new ability to, for example, with Claude and ChatGPT, being able to now access your computer, which most people don't know now, there's ways to actually get it to, yeah. So, well, you do have to give your permission. You do obviously have to download it and all that. But if you think about it, it's like there's a quote that's really good. I remember it. It's essentially, I'm paraphrasing. It's just like politics, right? Everybody complains about politics, right? And the politicians, but then it's like you have to look where's the society that they're coming from, right? So it's like garbage in, garbage out, right? So that's really the big thing now with AI is that even though it is being trained on these dumpster fires, right?
Yeah.
It's like the thing is if you've ever played a game where you get like score points, the garbage data is only giving them like 1 or 2 points, but that diamond in the rough is giving them 100 points, which is pushing them further, right?
Wow. Okay. And to clarify though, I mean, okay, so it could run on top of Linux or Windows, is what you're saying. And I suppose eventually that I kind of like that because it's like, okay, it's modular, so it's not like it's forever going to be running on Windows so that 400,000 years from now we have these AI robots or whatever and they'll still have a chunk of Windows at the beginning, right?
Yeah, and then that's why like with Hugging Face, if you go on there, right, and you're trying to actually deploy one of those AIs, you can obviously either do it through server side or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But they do actually have it where you can essentially just download it either via curl or aka onto your Windows computer, or if you are on Linux, then you do it through there.
Okay. And so, but all right, I'll go back to what you're saying then. So basically, when the AI trains itself, if it does have a lousy source like Windows, then it treats it as like a 1 or 2 point shot in basketball, right? But then if it finds a really good one, it treats it as a 3-pointer.
Exactly.
Wow.
And again, it all depends on who's training the AI, right? Because I've had this talk numerous times where it's like, well, we need to cramp down on disinformation. Yes, although there's an issue with that. That is a very, very double, it's like the swords. There's a Japanese sword, I forget the name of it, but essentially the actual attacking part of the sword is dull, but the backside of the sword is like sharp, basically.
Whoa.
Meaning that it only hurts the actual, like the person holding the sword, right?
Wow.
That is the issue with saying, oh, we need to go after disinformation with using these AIs, because then the question is this: who determines what's right or wrong?
And you know what? You and I are very lucky. We are among the very few, apparently, on Earth who have our own ability to discern. It's human discernment. And unfortunately, no one's taught that anymore. So, in reality, you don't need to worry about who's the arbiter of truth and who's to say it's misinformation and who's to, like all the pinheads on all the cable news networks and this is misinformation, right? Because you and I have something that every human being should have: human reasoning, right? So if I walk around and flap my arms and put and dance like a chicken or whatever and say I'm from the moon or whatever it may be, you and I would know that that's preposterous.
Exactly. But this is the thing, though. It's only me and you, right? And, not to diss anybody that is big into conspiracies and all that, but I do have to say this because this is super important. Mm-hmm. What most people don't understand about a lot of these conspiracies is that the reason most people fall for them is because they feel like they're in on some big secret, right? That no one else knows about, right?
And they don't have the discernment to say, okay, that's ridiculous. It's
exactly
logic.
It's not even the discernment, is that they take your pre-existing ideals, and the same thing AI does this. It takes its pre-existing ideals and then applies that to something that it doesn't understand fully, right? So I've seen this little kind of like this little funny thing on someone's back of their car, basically a car bumper, and it says, anything can be a conspiracy when you don't understand how anything works.
Wow.
So that's exactly what we're dealing with. And now, like with Sora, right?
Right, if you don't know the logic behind it, or especially if you're a government employee who uses Microsoft Outlook and doesn't understand the technology, or I mean, there's so...
If you don't understand... And it's not even... Because there's some people that will try to like also go, well, I was a nurse back in 1972, and I can tell you it's not that. Well, it's like things change, right? Mm-hmm. We always love to use the quote like, oh, nothing's new under the sun. But guess what? Every new day brings new light, right? And the light that is today is not the light that was yesterday. The weather that was today is not the weather that is yesterday. So it's like there is change, there is innovation. The core basis does not change.
Right, and as long as you have the human discernment for logic, that's, yeah.
And again, like, I mean, you see it with like the videos that I show every week. It is getting to a point where there was a video that was made out there where it was like Trump kind of doing something, and people believed it. There's a guy that literally copied Joe Biden's voice and had them call all the people in New Hampshire and told them not to vote. And this got like, it wasn't even like that the media brushed under the rug. It's that people, this is what I mean, we live in a non-technical society where people saw that and they were like, oh, Biden actually did that. He actually did that.
Well, right. Like, okay. Number one, again, 99% of people don't even know their own AOL and iCloud passwords. But right, if you had human discernment, if you went to whatever schools you and I went to, or if you had good parents like you and I did, or whatever, you'd know that that's preposterous. Mm-hmm. You'd know that Joe Biden calling you up and saying don't vote, you'd know that's preposterous, right?
Exactly, but the thing is that, and we're going back to like the privacy and the data stuff, it's that people don't realize that when they're in the echo chamber, right, the conspiracies, if you're in a conspiracy theory, right, into them, whatever, and you're not making money off of them, that means that someone's making money off of you, right? The thing that you're doing, right, it's either, and this is just something that's kind of like been very true to me and like what I just believe in personally, is that whatever you do, right, it should be for the betterment of everybody around you. It shouldn't be destructive.
That's what I do. The money comes later, as opposed to bros who just sell things to make a quota. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's like the image where it's like how the tech guy dresses, how the sales guy dresses, basically. And it's like the thing in what you do should be for the betterment of everyone. It shouldn't be destructive. Because what actually most people don't understand, right, when they hear, like, for example, critical race theory, right? I'm not going to go into that. All right, you guys can go do that on your own terms. But the actual basis of critical theory is just destruction. It's literally just to tear down something.
Tearing people down instead of building people up, right? And again, if people just knew, and I say this all the time to scammers when I call them, I say, if you actually helped people, you could make way more money, right? Even if you were selfish, right? Just you'd make way more money. It's that simple.
Yeah, even if you're, it's the funniest thing about helping other people. Even if you're selfishly helping other people, right, for the benefit even of yourself, right? Guess what? You still do. It's more net good than net negative.
Right, it's simple, but no one has logic anymore.
It's like you're a cook that's cooking. You're making food because you really want to improve your skill because you want to be the best out of everybody. Right. But at the end of the day, you're still feeding people.
Right. It's that simple. So all right. Well. Wow, that was a whole pile of stuff for people. Just logic, just washing everything with logic and shining a light on everything. So thank you so much, Jamarri, for being here. What's your website?
It is ACN Host. It's the abbreviated version of Ascension Hosting. Super, super easy.
ACNhost.com.
Bingo.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. We will talk to you again soon. Don't be a stranger. And wow, this was an advanced episode. Yeah, we'll talk to you next time. And thecomputerexorcist.com.
It's alright now. Make it on my own. I paid my time and my dues, and now I'm coming home. First they give you an inch, and then they take a mile. Stand you in the back and look at you in your face with a smile.